Now, you worked early on games like Bomberman, Bonk, and Drawn to Life, correct?
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
so, and those are generally from a larger publisher, though it might be a small development team. The publisher
Hmm.
tends to have a lot more weight to throw around with creative decisions. Um, and then indie projects are you're probably dealing with one director of the studio who gets to make most of the calls.
Yeah.
How are the experiences different for you, and what kind of creative outlets did you have, in the separate spaces there?
Well, in the very beginning, I didn't really know anything about the space that I was getting into. Um, so for all of those projects that you mentioned, I didn't really have I didn't even have access to the game to play while I was working. That was the era of here's a screenshot.
Oh boy.
Make us, here are the loops that you need to make or whatever. So it was a very detached experience in one regard, but it was a good learning experience. I will say that there were instances. Well, first of all, one of those games on one of the consoles, the music got downsampled to like mono 48 kilohertz or something horrible, and that was a surprise. But also there are times where I wrote music for one thing, like, oh, this, we need you to write music for the map screen, and we need you to write music for level 2. Okay, so I get screenshots for those things. I go and write those pieces and I deliver them, and then I don't hear anything. They're like, oh, we love them, great. And I don't hear anything, and then the game comes out, and then the level 2 music is in the map screen, and the map screen music is in level 2. And I'm like, well, what the hell, So there was a lot of things like that I kind of learned along the way.
Yeah.
That when you're in this sort of environment where, I mean, I was like, I was contracting
Yeah.
through another party. They were sort of casual projects in a way. There were just situations where that sort of level of obfuscation was frustrating for me, and it really motivated me to try to work on projects that were more intimate and personal, and where I would have more of an opportunity to actually get would actually be implemented, and how people would actually experience them, as opposed to just being, someone who's locked away, and they just throw screenshots over the fence, and then you throw like sound files back at them, and that's the end of it. Um,
So how exactly did you find yourself falling into like such large indie titles?
it was very, it was very well. It was very fortunate. I mean, I did work on a couple of really small independent games before that. I did a game on Newgrounds called Catastrophe, about a cat in space that like terrorizes the owner of this spaceship, which was really fun, and a couple of others like small games,
Yeah.
and a lot of that was a result of primarily. I mean, at this point, I was already performing live, doing chiptune music for a few years, but that space wasn't super. It wasn't super integrated with the independent game development space at all at that time. I would meet people though who liked chiptunes and who made games occasionally, and so there was that avenue, and then there was also through talking to people, like learning about communities. One of the communities at that time was TIG Source, which was
Yep.
Derek Yu's website, and actually his friend Jeff Lindsay was someone who I became friends with and ended up living with for a while. Um,
Very cool.
but that was all just sort of organic, like, going to this forum and seeing that there was like kind of a robust community of people making stuff. And there were a lot of like, at that time, there were a lot of people who have gone on to do really cool stuff who were there, including, Polytron folks were there. So I was like aware, and obviously Derek Yu, but I was like aware of the things that were going on there, and there were all these competitions and people just making games for fun, and that's kind of how I got into it. Really, I just would reach out to people who are making games for fun and be like, hey, I'd love to like work on this. It'd be fun, and just send them some music. My first big break, like big break, was Fez, and that was not, I didn't entirely know that was going to happen, but certainly the game had been in development for a while at the time, and there was some hype behind it. It had already won an award, an IGF award, and it hadn't even come out yet, which is kind of strange. Yeah, I think I was on their radar a little bit because they were maybe looking for more underground chiptune type people.
Yeah.
And I went with a crew of musicians from Boston, and we played a show in Montreal, and I met the programmer, Renaud, there, and we had a really good conversation. And I sort of, they were planning to do more of a compilation soundtrack, and I kind of suggested, I think it'd be better if one person did it. And not pointing any fingers or anything.
This guy, right?
Yeah.
One person.
Yeah.
And then after that, I mean, my entire career, trajectory changed completely, and many other like really amazing opportunities and projects sort of cascaded out of that project.
What kind of controls did you have in the Fez sound? Were you just writing kind of chiptune files and sending them to them, or was it more dynamic and kind of scriptable?
Yeah, there was some dynamic scripting going on. I don't know if you remember Exact, the Microsoft like interactive audio tool, audio pipeline or something.
As part of Direct Audio or whatever it was.
I think
Direct
so.
Audio 2, whatever it was. Yeah.
Something like that. So the programmer Renaud they were really like music forward, music friendly, and we're keen to try things. And I definitely had ideas about how to implement stuff, and I hadn't really had that many opportunities to explore that, so I was really stoked to try things.
Yep.
And so, Renaud built out this tool for me that did all these different things with the music that I would put into the game. So it was sort of a combination of like having like a little piece of software interface that could control containers of clips and like a tempo, and there were like these little features too that we had, like there are these little collectible cubes that you have to get, and you have to get I think 8 of them to fill one up.
Yep.
And we mapped them to scales depending on what the music is doing, and there's like day-night cycle changes in music, and random timing. There's all these little kind of subsystems that kind of allowed me to do fun things with the music.
Has that sort of the creative suggestion been able to expand into your other projects beyond Fez, like Hyperlight Drifter and your current projects?
The creative suggestion?
Yeah, like being able to sort of influence design, or have the design influence your music in sort of more creative ways than just traditionally, like as you did with like the older games that you had worked on.
Yeah, I think that really opened up the possibility space to me, as far as thinking about what I could actually do, what would be cool and different and interesting. So that was sort of the tip of the iceberg for me. And then I got around the same time, I would say actually, maybe even a little earlier, is when I started programming on my own, started experimenting with procedural music, and after Fez, found other outlets for that, whether it was like music software or the games I've done for Dino Polo Club, which have been almost completely procedurally generated, or other projects where it's just thinking about how to devise systems. It's really kind of branched out for me into a whole new kind of area of where I can be creative and kind of express myself in a different way. So it's super fun, and it's nice. It's nice to have something to do that's not just writing music straight. So it's a kind of a nice balance.